I didn't love myself, and you give power and influence to the wrong people. Look how it turns out. You have to hype yourself up when nobody else on the external is hyping you up. You have Hello and welcome back to Ascension with V. I am your host, Stacia Jeanette, or AKA V, and today I'm going to just talk about a few topics that I just wrote down a few seconds ago, and the first topic being recognizing patterns and making different choices. So diving into that, what do I mean by recognizing patterns and making different choices? So every single day, every month, every week, every year, there is a cyclical loop almost that we're in this thing that we call time here on Earth. And one thing that I have been very good at and that I've been working very diligently towards this incarnation is perfecting my craft of recognizing patterns, spotting the signs and symptoms, right? Of repeating patterns, right? And so one of the biggest repeating patterns that I have noticed and am currently really diving into is the pattern that I've had with some of my health things, right? So a lot of the things that have been happening with my health have happened in like a cyclical form. And I, over the last 3 years, have gotten very good at documenting and spotting what was kind of the canon effect, what was the big thing that set off or triggered certain events with my health or within my life. What happened within my life around these certain specific events that caused me to either end up into the hospital or me to end up having some sort of pain or symptoms going on? Like, what were the triggers of these things? Right. So over the last 3 years, that's what I've been very diligently working towards, because obviously that's not something that healthcare providers are going to do for me, nor have they ever. And I have had to be the Sherlock Holmes in my own life. I've had to be the doctor, the lawyer, the the prescriber, the counselor, all the things, all the roles in my life, because the things that I have, the things that have been going on with me are not common things. They're not things that have a ready-made, a ready-fixed cure. They're not simple, for lack of better words here. And I've had to be diligent and intentional with figuring out what's happening in my life on all fronts. So this has been the first time since, 2022 was the last time that I ended up having to go into the hospital for a particular health issue with my stomach. And I've not gone into the hospital with stomach issues since then. And it's because I've been, like I said, on this diligent path of trying to recognize what was causing what and how to kind of get off the crazy train. And this repeating pattern of like pain and suffering and trauma and repeat, it was just a cycle of rinse, repeat, do again. And so recently I was looking at my featured photos thing. I don't know if any of you guys who have iPhones, like it'll bring up on this day, 1 year ago, 2 years ago, or like it'll say on this day, some years ago, over the years on this day. I happened to see some times where here in March, at like March 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, where I was in hospital. And so I was like, this is interesting. And I dug in and I looked and I saw, like, over the years from 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, I was in the hospital during these months. Also during April and May. So like the time through March and May, I'm looking, I'm digging, I'm trying to see what is it that's happening around this time? Where am I missing the signs and cues? What is it that I'm doing or not doing that keeps keeping me in this loop, right? And it's a difficult process to do, because most of the time people are not cognizant. Most of the time people are not aware that there are certain things that are, of course, external factors, but most of the time they're factors that you have within your control to make a different choice on, right? And so me doing this very painstaking process has led me to this point of where I am at right now making this podcast, where I'm going through some abdominal pain, left upper quadrant type shit that I have experienced, like, again, 3 or 4 years ago, right? It's been a while since I've had this, and then of course, like, the endometriosis is playing a part in it, and and then I've got the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome that's overshrouding a lot of the things as well, and I'm sitting back and I'm looking at the situation. I'm thinking, like, I'm not doing this again. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do this again. And that's a conscious decision that I have made, is that, like, I'm not going to keep repeating the cycle of, like, trying to scour for answers and going to doctors and beating on the doors of the church only to be turned away, to no avail, right? Like, when I have the power within myself to make a different choice and to get out of this on my own. And that's what I'm doing currently right now. But it is very, very difficult. It is very difficult to, number one, bring yourself to the level of awareness to notice what is happening and to take the accountability and the responsibility upon yourself to say, all right, like, now this is it, damn it. This is it, damn it. I'm not going to keep doing this. And so now here I am. Also, side note on it, insurance is high as shit. It's different. It was different when I was under a different kind of insurance, and when insurance wasn't as expensive as it is right now. But now at this point, my insurance is sky high. It's expensive as shit, and it's not covering everything. And I've got like a $2,000 deductible. The process of me, going to doctors when I'm trying to figure out things over the last 2 decades is different. It's a lot different than it is now from a cost standpoint, but it's also different from the fact of I'm over here looking at things on a zoomed out perspective and seeing that this is just a repeating pattern, and there's no help to be found. There are no answers to be found down these dark tunnels over here, right? And so I'm not also about to be wasting precious money on the dead end paths. So, taking all of these things into consideration, I'm now here at the point of figuring out, what do I do now? And what I'm doing now is I am listening to my intuition on what steps to take. And the last reading that I did on my B Squad Oracle readings over here on YouTube was about essentially, you being in uncharted waters. This is like the midnight zone. You can't see where you're going. You don't have the road map. You don't have a guiding light to try to tell you, what to do and where you're going or how to get there. You've just got to, trust. And that's where I'm at. I'm having to just trust myself, trust my intuition, and trust that the intuitive hits and niggles and hunches that I'm getting on what to do, how to treat myself, what it can be a potential trigger for, what is happening with me, be it the endometriosis, be it the abdominal stomach stuff going on, whether it's the Ehlers-Danlos, whatever the case may be. I'm having to figure it out on my own. And I mean, as I have been, but this time is different. This time is me entirely making the conscious choice to be like, no more. I'm going to do this differently this time, regardless how much I was experiencing on the pain level or on the discomfort or on the fear. It's not like fear, but it's like a shit. Like, what if I'm making the wrong decision here, and like I end up croaking myself because I was just being too stubborn, and I dug my heels in and I said, F them, I'm not finna go to the hospital for this. I'm not going to the ER. I'm not going to urgent care. I'm not going to the doctor for this. let me pause here because I have gone, like, obviously I went to my GI doctor, to try and, like I said earlier, to try and be like, hey, what do we think is going on here? But she kind of put it back on me and said, what does your gut say? What does your intuition say? And I found that interesting as well, because I said that in the reading, you may find, people externally putting it back on you and saying, what does your intuition say? And I loved that. I loved that that was a confirmation for me of like, you know what's going on here. You know what's happening. And so I did do my due diligence as far as making sure that I didn't have anything catastrophic happening, as far as like doing blood work to make sure all things are in order from a emergent standpoint there. But unpause, moving on. I have made the decision to make a different choice. And making a different choice for me this time has included me kind of listening to what it is that my body's telling me that it does or does not need, or what is or is not happening. And a lot of this stuff, again, like looking at it from a hindsight or zoomed out perspective from what I had gone through the past 2 decades. Had I have listened to what my body was doing and not just like immediately went into like flailing, oh my God, I'm drowning mode, which is normal, because when you're feeling pain or when you're feeling just awful, when you're nauseous, when you're vomiting, when you got things going on, that's a normal response, right? But like, again, I have been in this boat. I'm 33 years old now, and I had like 7 years of my life where I wasn't dealing with some kind of health issues. You know what I mean? And so like, this is all I know. I'm not a rookie to this level of struggle, of pain, of suffering, of thug it out and just, push through type situation. I'm not, but it's hard when, where I'm at right now, you're fighting against what your body thinks it should be doing, right? So for the past 2 decades, my go-to thing was, what do the doctors say? Well, what do the doctors say? Even though I knew, this wasn't right, or what they were telling me was not actually what was going on type of situation, and I'm not there anymore. And it's scary to think now, that I could potentially be making a fatal decision. But then I stopped myself on that thought and said, I made that same decision when I made the decision to come off of all of my medications, back in 2022, and go AMA against medical advice on that decision. Meanwhile, the doctors were telling me if I stay on all these medications, I'm up for potential spontaneous combustion. But then on the other hand, if you come off the medication, you're also facing possible spontaneous combustion. So I had a 50-50 chance regardless, essentially, and I chose to be courageous and trust my intuition on that, just as I'm doing now. But it takes a lot to choose differently for yourself. Consequently, after I made the decision last night to be like, no, I'm not going to keep doing this shit. I'm not going to let this keep happening. I'm not going to continue to subscribe to the like, oh, I got this, that, and the third going on with me. Like, not in I'm like a denial situation, but in a like, I can control what does or does not happen to me. Like, I'm going to choose what I want for my life. I'm going to choose. No, I'm not going to continue to allow this cycle to keep repeating. I'm tired. I'm so tired of dealing with almost feeling like you're on like the puppet strings of life. Like you have to make a firm choice in your mind to say, I'm not going to allow this to happen to me anymore. I'm not going to be a pawn. I'm going to be the mover. I'm going to be the causer. I'm going to be the one that makes the decisions. I'm going to be the driving force in my life and not be the person that gets moved around by external forces. No, like I just set it in my mind, and I did a whole bunch of releasing and cord cutting, and a lot of taking back my power mentally taking back my power, because it's exhausting, y'all. It's very exhausting to keep riding the crazy train to no avail when you know there is nothing but frustration, anger, pain, suffering, and bills down the tunnels of the healthcare. When you've done it, when you've already done it, when you've already replayed and played and played the same movie, the same script, the same scenario over and over again, you have to make a choice, regardless what your situation is, regardless whether, again, this is just my situation that I've been looping with the health stuff, but insert your own situation here. Whatever you have going on, your first task is to notice the pattern. Notice what you keep doing, keep repeating, keep subscribing to mentally, what you keep agreeing to energetically, right? And if any of the things that you keep subscribing to or giving your energy to freely, you're not in alignment with, you have to take stock and take inventory and start cutting that shit out, because otherwise you're going to keep riding the crazy train. You know, you're in your life has to come into laser focus to get off of this. And again, like I said, I wanted this bad. I wanted to understand what the F's happening. I wanted to know, like, how do I get out of it? What am I missing? And I was missing the exit. But everybody's exit is going to look differently, and everybody's situation is obviously different. So, you know, you're going to have to apply this as it fits, and take the keys and the Easter eggs that I have hidden within this message for your own situation and use them wisely. This is a game, but you can control it. You can change it. You can change it. You know, instead of just being the player, maybe be the developer. You know, maybe the hacker, right? Figure it out. Figure out a way for you to win the game, right? Figure out, how do you get out of the maze? Where are the exits? And damn it, if you can't find the exit, you better beat your way out. You better claw your way out. You better climb the wall. You better dig underneath it. Whatever you've got to do, because this is your life. It's your life, and it's only you can prevent forest fires, Smokey. You know, you gotta want this, just like I was determined. You know, again, it took me 3 years. It took me 3 years to start stacking the evidence and looking over, you know, vigorously investing into my life to figure out where these patterns were. And not only that, but like astronomically, I looked at my birth chart, you know, and I found out when my Saturn returns were. I found out when, you know, anytime there's something going on with Saturn, you know, it's going to be a challenging time, right? So I got my life down to a science. I know exactly when. I know when that time of struggle is about to approach me. And this is that time. But in that time, whenever that time is for you, look at your birth chart and figure it out. If you don't know birth chartness, don't go to somebody else, because I didn't do that either. I studied enough that I needed to know to be able to crack my own individual codes. And that's all you need to do as well. Study just enough to know how to help yourself, right? Because you can't help nobody else until you get yourself out. So look and envelop yourself in your own study. Study yourself. You are your own biggest test subject. Study yourself, study your chart, study your patterns, study what happens in certain months with your planets, your moon. Where's your moon? Where's your Saturn return? Where is your Chiron? Understand your Chiron, right? And use these things collectively to your advantage to help in your research of yourself, because all of that valuable data and information that you will learn and gather on yourself are clues and keys to get yourself out of really shitty cycles, and they are the keys and the blueprints to your exits. It will highlight for you where the exits are in your maze, in your map, in your whatever it is that you want to call the repeating pattern of your life, right? But it's vigorous, and you have to you gotta want it. You really have to want it. You gotta want your freedom. You gotta want to get out of it. And again, like I said, moving on to my next point in this podcast here is you have the power within you. They would love for you to not know this, but I'm telling you this. And again, it's an Easter egg. And if you know, you know that you do have the power within yourself to control what you do or don't want to have happen in your life, but you have to do it the right way, right? You have to understand the rules, you have to understand the laws, you have to use them to your advantage. You can't get rid of them, but you can use them to your advantage. And the things that you have the ability to control is your mind, your emotions, and your energy. And if you aren't controlling those three things, then they are controlling you. And what I mean by that is that most people are slaves to their own minds, meaning that they are like an NPC, a non-player character, a passive agent in their own body, right? Like they are not the ones controlling their actions, their thoughts, their feelings, or their energy. They are just going through the motions as a bot, basically. And beyond that, if you are not able to drive your own vehicle, then the vehicle is driving you. Your mind is where everything happens. And so if you're not able to control your mind, then all is essentially lost. If you're not able to control your emotions are going to take you hostage, sweep you away at sea. You will drown in your own emotions. And I know because I've been there. You know, I have Aries rising, so that fire in me was burning ablaze frequently, you know, and everything in its sight. Like you have to learn to control your emotions or they will control you. And you have to also be aware of your energy. All three things are connected, but it starts in the mind. So this is learning whatever works for you to calm your mind and to get back in there and start cleaning out them cobwebs, start getting out the fabuloso, start getting out the vacuum, start getting out the duster, whatever, all the tools. You got to do a clean sweep and clear out the nonsense. And you really got to allow yourself to process and look at, this is the shadow work thing that I speak of frequently, but you've got to clean house in there and get rid of all the shit that you don't need and start dealing with and processing all the shit that you tried to not deal with or process over your lifetime. You know, and depending upon your age, that might be quite a bit of shit, and it's going to be quite a process, quite a feat. But you can't keep running. You cannot keep running from your mind, nor can you keep running from your emotions. These things are hoeing you in the long run because you don't have control of your vessel. But once you get through that process and you do start to obtain some control over your mind, you can then start controlling your emotions, right? So when your mind starts coming into play and you're aware, oh, I'm here and I'm in this and I'm driving this vehicle, you know, you can feel what's happening within your body. You can feel when your emotions are getting heightened. You start learning your triggers. You start learning what's going to set you off. You know, just like me, like I learned very quickly when I came off of my medications, like I started learning very quickly what were things that were going to piss me off real quick and what were things that would hurt me or make me sad. You know, I'm a Cancer moon, so I'm very, very highly sensitive and intuitive and emotional on things. And so I learned that very quickly, like, oh shit, like I'm out here like a Care Bear, you know, and I felt kind of triggered because, you know, my heart chakra is so active and radiant and open all the time. And I thought for a while, I was like, oh no, oh no, this might help me, but it's quite the opposite. If you are like me and you have a very radiant and open and active, fully active heart chakra, that that is actually your most powerful gift. That is your protection and your magnetizer to bring in whatever is meant for you, and it'll repel what is not for you. But again, I learned that over time. But when you start being able to pinpoint what your triggers are, when you start being able to notice the things that make you happy, on the flip side, when you notice the things that bring you joy, you got to write this shit down. Like I said, you got to be Sherlock Holmes in this piece, like taking diligent notes on yourself. You have to know yourself better than outside forces or the enemies know you. Right? You need to become very, very familiar with yourself inside and out, and what makes you tick and what makes you thrive, what powers you and what drains you. And once you have that part of the formula down, then you can move on to your energy, right? That's the next component to it. Your energy is your currency, especially where we're at here in the spiritual world, the spiritual transition, the spiritual existence. When you are aware in your mind and you are aware in your emotions, you can be aware in your energy. You can control your energy. You can control how you give your energy and how energy externally does or does not affect you, right? So your energy is subjective to your mind. Just listen to what I'm saying. Your mind, whatever frequency your mind is on, whatever you're vibrating at, output your mind is putting out as frequency, like a radio. Whatever frequency you're at is the energy that you're going to be emitting. Right. And so you can control what kind of energy you want to output dependent upon how you raise or lower your frequency or your vibration mentally, because your mind is the powerhouse of the manifestations. So if you are operating in a low frequency, if your emotions are shitty, if you're like down in the dumps, if you're based on fear, if you're super depressed and angry or whatever the case may be, try your best to shift the sliding scale of the negative to a positive. You can always do that. They're the same thing. Negative, positive, just front, back, right? If you want to emit or attract in more positive, you have to raise your mental frequency and vibration to the flip side of that negative energy, which is the positive. And again, these are all things that go hand in hand with one another, and you've got to, again, have the biggest component, the number one component, your mind on board first. You have to be controlling the vessel. The vessel cannot be controlling you. You have to be in control of your energy. You have to be in control of your emotions. You have to be in control of your mind. All of them have to work together like the triangle: mind, energy, emotions, mind, body, soul. You mental, physical, emotional, you mental, physical, spiritual. You have to have the components connecting together all the time, running in beautiful synchronicity in order for that well-oiled machine to operate like a well-oiled machine. And it's not something that happens overnight, but try again, always, and dedicate yourself to perfecting the craft that is your own vessel, perfecting the craft that is your own mind, perfecting the craft that is your own emotions, perfecting the craft that is your own energy. Because once you are able to do these things, then you are able to then control your world, what happens to you or what does not happen to you within the realms of the laws, right? And with that being said, you guys, that's what I have. I wanted to just kind of get that off the dome. And ladies, in the season of Easter, if you believe in such things, Easter eggs out here for those who are meant to find it, and enjoy the scavenger hunt within this podcast. And I hope that you find what you need in this season. With that being said, take care. V Squad.